They don't make them like they used to. This truism describes the concept of planned obsolescence, that a product is made to require replacement after a set period of time. This practice has existed in various forms since the 1920s, but has it finally infected video games? Or has it been here all along? We'll be discussing that and more next on Downloadable Content. Hello everyone, and welcome to Downloadable Content. I am Ronnie, and with me we have Brian.
Hey, it's weird that I get to be in the panelist chair.
And we have Ron.
Hey everyone.
And today we are going to be talking about planned obsolescence in video games. But before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that every single episode of Downloadable Content can be found on the website dlcpodcast.com. Episodes can also be found on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and Google Play Music. Also, you can check out on the website upcoming episodes. Check them out. Let us know if you want to be on an episode or give us an idea for future episodes. We love to get them. In the video game industry, you're never only competing with your competitors, you're also competing against yourself in the form of your older games. You need to convince the players that it is worth spending their hard-earned money on your new game and not just remaining with your older releases. That was the way the industry worked until recently when we introduced the concept of forcing people off of your old games. In the video games industry, planned obsolescence for the most part originated as an outgrowth of both our use of servers for multiplayer and DRM, and a reaction to the actions of the gaming community as a whole. Since then, companies have become more blatant in their attempts to force gamers off their older games to buy the new hotness. This will be the discussion topic for the day. Hi, everyone!
Hi, Ronnie!
Okay, so first off, nice presentation. Sounds like someone's preparing for a college degree or something, but
This is how Ronnie.
Sorry if I over-prepared,
This
guys.
is how Ronnie prepreres a thesis, ladies and gentlemen.
I know.
You're No.
It's fine.
It's absolutely fine. I'm just we've taken a decidedly NPR route to this. I don't mind. It's a bit more highbrow than the usual tripe that I spit up. So
What are you talking about? I literally based my thing off of one of your episodes.
you know, I'm flattered. Maybe you just have a more eloquent speaking voice than I do. But
in any case, so the idea of so just for me personally, the idea of planned obsolescence is partially a thing that it's one of the things that I'm aware of. I never really think about it just because of the consumer lifestyle that we as Americans tend to live.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's a thing of like, oh, I'm expected to have a car that's only going to last 10, 15 years, and I'm going to have to get a new one because the parts are going to break down, or the body is literally going to rust off of the frame.
Yeah.
Or refrigerator, you'll need to replace your refrigerator every 10, 15, 20 years because just more efficient, the motors degrade over time, things like that.
Well, I mean, the easiest example I think for most people to swallow is cell phones.
Yeah.
Like, cell phones could last us for a long time, but we're expected to upgrade our cell phones after a year or two at most.
Yeah. For reference, I used to sell cell phones, and that was the thing we were told to push was, yes, people could use their cell phones for 2, 3, 4, 5 years if they take good care of it. but we need to make sales. We need to get the new hotness in people's hands, so we need to sell these things to them.
Planned obsolescence, just so you guys know what I'm talking about. Planned obsolescence is the broader term for all of the things we're talking about. Forced obsolescence is when they're literally you can no longer access the product. When an MMO is closed down or DRM servers don't exist anymore. Like, you literally cannot access that anymore. Soft obsolescence is more of the psychological, we're doing these things to make this less, to make you want to go to the next thing, even if you still are enjoying the current one.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that for me, one of the more annoying things, not just for technology, but in gaming overall, because, and you're absolutely right, we have our technology, use cell phones as the example. It's a great example that, clearly I'm not the target audience because I use my cell phone until it doesn't breathe anymore. Same thing with my consoles. I still have PS2 and PS3. And when I see, for example, Apple in the cell phone world, with, upgrading their cell phones to the next iPhone whatever, and then they deliberately go out of their, it's not the fact that they're making a new phone that irks me so much, it's the fact that they deliberately go out of their way to make it so that no current iPhone accessory can work with this new phone. So if you have, the iPhone 7, I'll just use that as an example, and you have the charger, earbuds, a case, and it's also compatible with previous generations of iPhones, then the next one, Apple comes right out and says, you can't use that on this new device, even though it's running the same operating system. We're going to force you to get a new charger, a new case, new earbuds. That really annoys the shit out of me.
Let's also keep in mind, too, that with the iPods, or iPhone specifically, was the switch between iPhone 7 and 8 when they got rid of the headphone jack?
Probably. I think that sounds right. I know that it did happen.
And, that's a huge deal. People want to listen to their music on whatever headphones they have available to them. They may not want to spend money on
Bluetooth
or the USB-C headsets. And, because I don't know about you guys, but buying a cell phone's real expensive.
Yeah. I agree. I do understand to the point that, change is always going to be hard, and sometimes companies have to make changes and improve stuff and drag people kicking and screaming into it. There are people who are still angry that Windows 10 dropped the Windows 3.1 code that let them use some of their stuff from the early 90s.
I understand that, the brain fart. I understand the desire to, introduce new technology and not have to worry about encoding for older things just because backwards compatibility is a very difficult thing to do, and I get that.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that some developers do not want to focus on because they can spend all that manpower and hours and dollars on it, making newer, better features with their new stuff.
Here's actually something I'll bring up that I actually wasn't going to bring up until the end, but both you and Brian already touched on it. Where, Brian, you were talking about how you still keep all your old consoles, right?
Yep. And
Ron, with what you were just saying, one way, and this is very deliberate. It's actually, I believe it was either Microsoft or Sony. One of their people actually said this to some of their developers, that part of the reason they do not support backwards compatibility is because with the trading culture as it is, where most younger people, when they get the PS4, they're going to trade their PS3 in and get what they can for it. And if you don't have backwards compatibility, you were literally going, okay, we're trading this in, and now we don't have to worry about competing with any of those old games ever again.
Yeah.
Because they're going to trade those games in too, because they can't play them on their new console.
Mm-hmm.
So you can start fresh every generation and never have to worry about the older ones. For the most part, demographically, older gamers tend to keep their old systems. Newer gamers tend to just trade them in to get their newer systems.
And yes, that is absolutely the case. It's definitely, we've noticing that shift, the generational shift, and I look at that and I go, why are you I'm like, why are you doing that? I mean, okay, fine, but this is why I embrace emulators, because I still get joy out of playing Super Mario World or
Mario Kart, as we did when we were up there visiting you.
Yeah, or the original Mario Kart. And, I still get satisfaction playing the games that I grew up with. Why do I want to cut off my ability to play those?
Simplest answer, shit's fucking expensive, yo.
Yeah. Well, I will actually say, Brian, I think part of this is also a generational thing that is one of your pet peeves, and I think this might give you a little more insight into it. That trading culture is why people demand ports or remakes of games all the time, because when the PS4 comes out and they get their PS4, they're getting rid of their PS3. But their favorite games, they expect those to be ported to the PS4 in some form so they can buy them again and own them on their new system.
Which, for somebody like myself, who is very careful about where their dollars go,
mm-hmm.
paying multiple times for the same game, to me, is utter madness. Like, why do you want to give a developer why do you want to pay full price for the same game 2, 3, 4 multiple times?
Capcom.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I understand that this is the era we live in now, but to me, that just seems like, why are you throwing your money away like that? That's just how my brain works. I mean, and you and I, Ronnie, we both grew up in not well-off families.
Absolutely.
So I think part of the reason for me why I still hold on to some of these games is because it's like, I paid for these. These are mine forever. I don't want to give these up. I don't want to pay a developer multiple times for the same game.
That's why I'm more fond of remakes than ports. Because at least then I feel like I'm getting something new out of it. Like the RE1 remake, totally okay with that.
And in that instance, so was I, because it felt like a brand new game.
Yes. But I know I'm more okay with ports than you are, because my thought process is, I'm not going to buy it a second time, but all this does, bringing it to the new console, is allow a whole nother group of people that didn't have the chance to enjoy it the first time to play it.
Mm.
So I guess I'm always going for what gives people the widest selection, because there's always going to be people, like, I still haven't played The Last of Us yet.
Right.
I know how good it is, I know how amazing it is, but it was Game of the Year, and there's still people who are gamers, who identify as gamers, that have not played it yet.
Right.
So I'm okay with that.
And that's fair. And it just, when I saw, because I mean, we all obviously grew up with, we had the PS2s and PS3, and for a few generations, the consoles were deliberately built with backwards compatibility in mind, and it's within the last couple of generations that these companies, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo have wised up and realized, wait a minute, if we get rid of backwards compatibility, that'll force people to buy the same games multiple times, and the amount of money that that gamers are willing to shove at these companies. It's like, why are you rewarding these companies for taking away backwards compatibility?
Well, here's the thing. Backwards compatibility was always there. It was never there for the consumer. It was there to solve a problem. And the problem was, when you launch a video game system, you have a very, very small library, and it is very difficult to get people to switch to your new console.
Right.
Let's also keep in mind too that for the PS2, the Xbox 360, and the Wii, by and large, that was literally them taking the hardware from the PS1 or the Xbox or the GameCube and slapping it into the same console as the Wii hardware, or as the current generation hardware. There's a reason why the Xbox 2 is so beloved, but on launch cost $600, because it was literally the hardware for the PS2 plus the DVD player plus the hardware for the PS1.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the whole backwards compatibility thing was just it was a way for them to go, okay, look at this. For launch, you have a 10,000 game library because you have everything from the PlayStation era. Look at that. Best launch lineup ever. So that solved a problem for them. But then they realized that means our new games are competing with 10,000 older games that many times you can buy cheaper now because they're used. They're in used game stores.
Yes, and it's not really a secret that the video game industry despises the used game market.
Well, they hate it. They hate the fact that they don't get these new sales, because why would I buy a new game when I can go to a GameStop and get that same game just a week later for $10, $20, $30 off?
Yeah. And I mean, to a point, they do have some legitimate issues there, but they often overreact on their ways of dealing with it.
Yes.
DRM.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll get to DRM. But so we've been talking more in the general sense, but before I go into stuff, because you all know I've prepared all kinds of crap, but how have you guys seen obsolescence touching the video game market? Or video games specifically?
For me specifically, I feel like it's going to be a problem, it's going to be a more prevalent problem in the next 5 to 10 years. Yeah. And I'm going to name a title right now that people have probably heard of and played, World of Warcraft. Blizzard is not going to continue paying for World of Warcraft servers 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Sooner or later, Blizzard is going to pull the plug on literally a decade or 20 years worth of video gaming that people have invested thousands, if not hundreds, if not thousands or millions of hours into.
And dollars.
And dollars.
Yeah,
and dollars.
Dude, that's not an exaggeration. I was in the thousands of hours when I played.
Yeah. So, that's going to be a thing that's going to happen within the next 5 to 10 years, because there's no way Blizzard is going to want to continue paying that much money for this MMO when they themselves have said, we're kind of getting near the end of what we can conceive of for the World of Warcraft story. And this is the thing that they've been doing, World of Warcraft 1, 1998?
I'll look that up.
I think later than that. I'm pretty sure later than that.
I will have a look. Hold on.
Yeah.
2004.
Yeah, there we go.
So
I was out of high school when it came out. I know that.
2004.
It's for the first one, and then 2006, 2007 for Warcraft 3.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, World of Warcraft itself launched in 2004.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
You were asking for the older games. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was asking for the Warcraft 1.
Oh, okay. You weren't talking about the original.
That's more than 90. That's earlier than 98 by quite a bit. That's like 94.
The first game. It's Warcraft: Orcs and Humans, November 1994.
Bam!
So
look at that.
This is a Sire series is nearly 25 years old.
Yep.
And the MMO itself is 18, almost 19 years old. I'm sorry, no, 14. Sorry, 14.
Yep.
My math was
Yep.
wrong.
You're correct. 14
years old. And they're coming out with an expansion this fall.
Yep. As soon with any MMOs are ephemeral. As soon as it is financially viable to produce a new game than it is to keep the old game going, the game is ending.
Yeah.
And
they're going to pull the plug. Yeah.
Yeah. And like this is problematic from a game not just from a people still want to play it, but from a game preservation standpoint and from a nostalgia standpoint. Like, okay, both of you have played video games most of your lives, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. You guys have nostalgia for old games you played when you were kids, right? That you can go back to?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Mario, Chrono Trigger, anything like that?
Yeah.
This generation isn't going to have that. I mean, they're going to want to, but if they played an MMO, they can't do that anymore. If there was a mobile game that they loved, that's going away. If it's a first-person shooter, the servers were down years ago. You can't do that anymore. And the biggest one for me, you love those single-player games? Well, guess what? In 20 years, you won't be able to get those patches that make that broken-ass game that they released able to be played. And all that pretty DLC they released, it's gone.
Yeah. And it's also the thing, too, of, like, not even the patches of the DLC, 15 years or so, we would hope that we can emulate some of these games. But they're increasingly cracking down on the emulation to the point where some of these systems may just not be feasible for someone to make an emulator for a PS4 game or a Xbox One game.
Well, also... sorry.
So to finish my point, like, in a theoretical future, if it's not feasible for even a fan to do it, then in 10, 15 years, no one's going to be able to play a PS4 game, period, because they're not going to be making PS4s in 2030. They're not going to be making replacement parts or Blu-ray lasers or disc ejection ports for the Xbox One in 2030.
The new systems aren't built like the NES. They're not built to last 30 years. And
they're using hardware and architecture that is designed to be eventually replaced or upgraded within 5 to 10 years of relative use.
Like, I think basically all the consoles should be able to last 10 years as a lifespan if you kept using them. I mean, you could always, if you treat things well enough, get a longer lifespan. I think 10 years is a reasonable number to say for a lifespan.
Yeah, where you may have small minor problems, I mean, nothing like the power converter inside of the thing won't break, or the disk drive won't work, or the laser won't work properly, or something like that. I think for me personally, I could throw in a launch PS1 right now, and it would load just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's and I've used that thing a lot. It's gone with me to college. It's gone with me to several places, but that thing in its small little gray box just keeps on trucking.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, I mean, part of it is the new systems become more complicated. There's more things that can go wrong. Like, it's not all them planning to end it, but also it is them going, well, this is the lifespan we want this to have, so this is how long we're going to make sure it's going to last for, and then after that, it can fail. They're not making them to last indefinitely or as indefinitely as possible.
Right, and
if anything, the fact that we can still play NES games right now probably infuriates a bunch of the Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo.
Oh yeah, April's got an NES, and we still have cartridges. Oh yeah, we can plug that in and get right to playing. Still,
and they do not want that. I mean, Xbox was the one who was most blatant about it when they originally announced that they were going to prevent you from selling used games. But if any of the other companies could get away with it, they would in an instant.
Yeah, I remember Microsoft announcing that, and the backlash
was immediate and loud and very painful. And
that's one thing I was going to say at the end of this as a takeaway, but any of the stuff we're talking about for obsolescence that they're doing, there are many ways that we can deal with it or get around it, but the most important for anybody listening to this, if you take anything away from this, is when you see companies doing this kind of shit, be vocal and be loud and let them know that you do not appreciate what they are doing and that you see what they are doing.
Going back, yes, that, but going back a couple of minutes to it, talking about servers.
Yes.
Yes, servers that are hosting, MMOs, they will eventually shut down, and that does create a problem not only from a playing perspective, but also from a preservation perspective. But then what about games that are single-player, which require an internet connection? And I'm looking right at EA and Mass Effect.
DRM.
Yeah.
I was going to say the online DRM servers, as soon as a company decides that they want to go to a new DRM stream, or they feel that they've done enough for this, those servers are going away. And even if it's not the company's fault, if eventually the company may go under, and all those games will never be playable again.
Yeah, I mean, like, Mass Effect, you could make an argument, has been one of the greatest franchises in the last decade. I mean, I absolutely love it, but it pisses me off to no end, and thank you, EA, that even though Mass Effect is a single-player experience, you must be connected to the internet.
I mean,
it has to be able to dial home, and it's like, okay, once EA decides not to have those servers running anymore, because the DRM servers, you can't play Mass Effect ever again.
All these ideas sound great in the moment. Okay, you don't have to deal with all that bullshit DRM you usually have to deal with. All you have to have is an internet connection. You don't have to deal with code. You don't have to deal with saving anything. You don't have to deal with any of that bullshit. Just have to have an internet connection. But all these things are going to be coming home to roost in the next 10 or 20 years. And all of it's going away. Especially
now that especially in this age of more and more digital distribution of video games.
Yeah. This is going to be, mark my words, this is going to be a forgotten generation of video games when it comes to history.
Okay, so as things stand right now, is either going to be the only thing that's going to make a lot of these games playable for future generations to enjoy or explore is a fan-driven initiative to, like, almost literally buy servers and run them themselves just to host until some chronological...
The problem...
Until some chronological society decides to step in and actually say there's actual art here that needs to be saved.
The issue is, and they've already tried, by the way, and I was going to bring it up later on. A couple groups have petitioned the Library of Congress, I believe it is, who deals with preservation.
Yeah.
For exemptions to the copyright guidelines, so that they would be able to legally create servers for these games that no longer exist. They would remain so that the information is there, or at least be able to give an exemption so that we can try to hack the code and get the information while it still exists. And so far, and the Library of Congress has made exemptions like that for video games. That's the whole reason that it is legal for us to rip NES and SNES cartridges. Those are exemptions. Those were not in the law. Like that's not something we would normally be able to do for preservation. But up until now, basically they've gone, you don't own an online game. You have a license for an online game. Therefore, you have no rights to do this.
Not to mention the fact that recent efforts to preserve more recent games have gone up against a gigantic wall of opposition from developers or publishers under the excuse of piracy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's like, okay, is some of it piracy? Maybe a little, like maybe 20%. But I feel like for the most part, it's more so a thing of like, no, we recognize at least some of the more, I'm saying enlightened, but invested fans recognize that there is some art that is in these games that needs to be at least preserved in some fashion. But them as the business, and even the developers may feel the same way, but them as a company can't allow that, I feel.
If for art, you don't have to go and see the original copy of the Mona Lisa to see what it looked like.
Yeah.
We have that preserved. Art through the generations is preserved. Music through the generations is preserved. We have these. These are part of our culture. If you're an art student, you can see the great works of art and learn from them, no matter where you are.
Or even if you're not an art student, you can still go to the web. You can look online and look at the Sistine Chapel and appreciate the effort and beauty of that.
Oh, absolutely. But I was mainly focused because I was going to go to game developers in the future. If things work out, they're not going to be able to look back on The Last of Us and see how they told stories now and how the medium evolved. They'll be able to look at the NES, SNES era up to the PlayStation. But this whole era we're in right now, and possibly going forward, are just going to be big blank holes, and the only games they're going to be able to look at are the ones that were popular enough that they were given ports later on in their lifespans. And how depressing as fuck is that to think about?
And that's why I don't get rid of my consoles.
But it's even going to affect you, Brian.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
I mean, I'll give an example right now, which we talked about online digital releases. The Wii. There were a ton of digital-only games that were exclusive to the Wii. Gone forever now.
Yep, because Nintendo shut down the Virtual Console. They shut down the Wii Shop channel.
Yep.
And yeah, so you can no longer purchase. You can you can't even play online multiplayer anymore. Nintendo shut all of that down.
If you own the game on your system, you still have it. You'll never be able to re-download a game you had before again. If you'll never be able to get another one, and online multiplayer gone.
Yep.
And that's going to be happening to the Wii U later on, beginning of next year. Is the shutdown date, I believe?
I'll look that up. But yeah, I mean, I don't know the Wii U, but yeah, I know that's coming, and that's also why, again, I'm never gonna get rid of my Wii. I bought a bunch of games off the Virtual Console. Well, the Virtual Console ones, those can go because I have my RetroPie, and I'm gonna sit here feeling very smug and superior. But those are some. But the games that were available on the Wii Shop channel that were new titles then.
Yeah, there was on the Wii U they had Konami did a bunch of new versions of their old games where they had a new Contra, they had a new versions of like 4 or 5 of their games. They were all exclusive to the Wii U. Never got releases anywhere else, and assuming they don't port them somewhere, those will be gone. Now we're just complaining about... We've gotten a little off topic, though.
Well, you're the host, Mr. Big Shot. You corral this back.
Absolutely. I'm going to corral it back. So we've talked a lot about forced obsolescence at this point, where things literally just shut down. But there's a lot of ways that they use player psychology against them in soft obsolescence. The biggest one that I want to bring up that I think you guys might have something to say about is first-person shooters. Especially multiplayer first-person shooters. Yeah. You need a critical mass of players to keep a first-person shooter, to keep the multiplayer alive. And
just right now, as you're talking about, just like trying to imagine 5 years down the road, someone trying to play PUBG, just like that's not going to happen.
You got it. But that's less intentional. More what I'm talking about is, have you ever wondered why the time period between Call of Duties is so short? It's not just what you might think. They've found the shortest period of time where they're able to get a critical mass from their old game to their new game and kill the old game off. Because they want to take those players from the previous Call of Duty, because if they don't do it fast enough, another game will take those players. They do focus testing and find the shortest amount of time that they can get the minimum amount of players who are going to bitch about switching and do it, and then the rest of the people who are playing the old one, once there's not enough people to do the online, they have to switch, even if they don't want to. I mean, I have friends who work in GameStops who, when they ask why they're buying the new Call of Duty, like, what's drawing you to it, and they go, my friends are already on it, so I have to. Like, yeah. So,
yeah.
Sorry, Ron?
I was going to say, this is it's not just Call of Duty that does it too, but Battlefield's starting to get into that, and Rainbow Six Siege is the newest hotness, but like they've been doing that for 2 or 3 years now, and sooner or later, like that's gonna stop having servers for it or online multiplayer. That's an online only game.
Yeah, like, and it's the same thing to a point with Assassin's Creed and the other ones is the reason that they're doing these really short development cycles and doing annual releases for a lot of things was them going, well, they're going to play my game for a certain amount of time, and then after that amount of time, they're going to move on. So I need to get my game out before that, to get them before they move on, and force them onto my new one so I don't lose them to another company.
Yeah, it's just...
Feels slimy, doesn't it?
It's super slimy, and like, we can't, as a consumer, can't do a whole lot about it right now, because either don't play the game and don't enjoy it by voting with your wallet, but then that means you can't enjoy it. Well, then you want to enjoy it, so you look through other channels to acquire it. Well, that's illegal, and you can get fined or go to jail for it.
Yeah, I mean, obsolescence. When I did the intro, you saw I mentioned this has been around since the 1920s, and that's true. The concept has been listed in production, and it has been talked about for years. And as consumers, we have to decide where we draw the line, because obsolescence is not necessarily always a bad thing. It depends on how the companies do it. Obsolescence itself is neutral. It's them forcing it on us that's the problem. Because something is obsolescent when we stop using it. When it is no longer serves its purpose to us and we move on. It's them forcing us off of it before we're ready that's the problem. And we have to decide where we draw the line. Like, for me, I think that that when we own a digital release and it goes away because they close their shop down, that crosses my line. And the first time it affects a console that I put money into, I'm going to be very vocal about that.
for me, I think it's also a case of not just like a digital only sale, but it's also going to be I kind of want to go like one step before you when it's like, if you as the developer do not allow the game to continue existing after you have done supporting it. In the sense of like, don't allowing fans to run private servers, or not making the game's code available free for all to play in like a link that can be self-propagated or torrented.
Have you heard the saga of Tabula Rasa?
That's what I was about to mention. This is for those unaware, this is a sci-fi MMO. Correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Fuck the fuckery involved in that.
Yeah, there's some. Long story short, corporation fuckery is so bad for this game that a fan can't even host a server for it to run it privately because it's illegal for them to distribute that server code.
Mm-hmm. Well, technically it's illegal to do that for any game, but they enforce it rabidly because of spite. Because
they hate the developer that the person who made it that much.
Yep, and they illegally fired him, and he got a very large severance because of it. But they hate that developer with a passion, and they are going to salt the earth of anything he's ever worked on.
Oh yeah, anything he wants to work on too, there's immediately a black eye on because of what happened to him, and with the company, and even the guy himself is like, I'm almost blacklisted from the gaming community because of this company, which did an illegal thing, which I got paid for.
Yep, it's completely bullshit. I was gonna say that anybody who's out there who hasn't heard of it, go look up the Tabula Rasa story and learn about a piece of game, a game that I personally played and loved for the 5 weeks it existed.
Thereabout. It was like 2 months that it was online.
It was 2 months, yeah. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it was rough, and that's a game I keep wanting to look back on, and I keep looking to see if somebody has gotten servers up on, and they are so brutal about this.
They hate the guy that much. That's how bad they hate him.
They will spend more money to stop people from using that game that they will never make another game of than they made from the game in its entire lifespan.
At this point, it's probably a case of they're losing money doing this, but they hate them that much that they don't care.
That's exactly what it is. We were talking about MMOs. We talked about the hard obsolescence of an MMO shutting down, but there's also soft obsolescence. And World of Warcraft's a great example of this, where they will deliberately create immediate and strong power creep when they release a new expansion, invalidating anything you already had immediately. In any other situation, that's terrible. Normally, you want the power to creep up at an even rate. You don't want a big jump in anything. But in an MMO, you do it, because then, if the first thing you get in the new expansion is better than the best thing you can get from your previous expansion, then when the new expansion comes out, you have to get it if you want to remain competitive, if you want to keep doing anything.
Well, it's not just the thing with World of Warcraft. That's just MMOs in general, and they all do it to a different scaling degrees of success and failure. Some of them are more blatant about it than others.
Yeah.
But if they all do it, it's all going to be a case of like, well, we increase the level cap. Of course, the new gear is going to be better than your old gear, but
yeah.
Well, I think an example I saw was when the recent World of Warcraft expansion came out was Battle for Azeroth, or what was the one? Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Someone that was a big World of Warcraft grinder and like had the best gear prior to the game coming out, went and did like a side area and things like that. He found a piece of green gear, which is like generic, weak, poor that was better than his best gear in terms of raw numbers. Like, here's a piece of green from a trash mob that he fought and killed for a quest that had better stats than some of the best gear he had available to him at the time.
Mm-hmm. My brother had the Warglaves, which were the legendary equipment from the end of Burning Crusade. They were pretty much immediately outdated as soon as Lich King came out. That was something he spent 6 months of raid time to get, and he's the only one in his guild that had both.
And then that happened.
Yeah, like, and even more. I mean, on the forced obsolescence route, what if I'm not even going to say, oh, what if you wanted to play vanilla World of Warcraft and all this other stuff is out in the world? No, I'm saying, what if you want to play vanilla World of Warcraft because vanilla World of Warcraft has been replaced after Cataclysm? It doesn't exist. Those quests are gone forever. They reshaped the game world, and you cannot go back. If you get an old copy of the first World of Warcraft and install it, you can't play that world.
Knowledge go to a private server, and those require an entirely new set of net coding and rerouting of things and things
they got
like
the
that.
And they got the biggest one shut down.
Yeah, because they don't want people playing it.
I don't even know if there's another one.
After that first one, it's a lot more hush-hush now, or they're hosted privately and they're run by like streaming personalities that they don't want to deal with right now.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, that happened for both the original and Burning Crusade, where you just can't go to those areas anymore because they've been updated with the new ones in such a way that old content just doesn't exist. You can't go back and nostalgia doing Blackrock Depths. You can't go and play in the Sunlight Plateau. Sunwell Plateau. Guys, it's been a long time since I've played WoW. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I have never played WoW, so
I quit after Lich King, so I was there for 3. I was there for 3 of them.
Like you make it sound like a drug.
I was actually in the original beta for the original World of Warcraft.
Like you make it sound like it's like the World of Warcraft is an addictive carcinogen, and you just.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I was gonna say all MMOs, and to an extent, all video games are. So.
I mean, it's just for me personally. I never got into World of Warcraft because I was too poor to afford the subscription.
I was gonna say, if you want a subscriptionless version of digital crack, go play Civilization. But yeah, so we talked about digital games and how when the systems go away, we're going to lose them forever. Or when the DRM goes away, we're going to lose them forever. My question to you guys is, what rights should we hold to digital games? Because as of right now, all we hold is a license that can be revoked at any time.
In my opinion, if you this would be just me if I was running a company that made an MMO that was going to be or a game of some kind that was potentially going to be shut down. Assuming this was even affordable or feasible, I would basically go like, okay, once we reach that tipping point of feasibility or affordability, not affordable, there's a giant press release being made, emails are sent to everyone, stuff like that. And I go to these people and I say, if you guys want server codes, I will give you server codes, so that way when this game is shut down, you can still enjoy it privately.
I would say the best choice would be open source the server code, throw it on a wiki, and then let the fan base do what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's basically what I would do. But like again, that's not even going to preserve it indefinitely. You would need to have there be physical backups for them to use as well, that they would need to be able to have access to. Because wiki it or whatever. Like you could throw it on the internet, and sure, it may last forever, but you still need a physical copy in case things get corrupted because data is not.
Yes, but
corruptible.
Once a game is out on the internet, there will be a physical copy somebody makes of it. Like that's, I don't think the company needs to worry about that. Once it's out there, it's going to be preserved. There are people obsessed with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, they are. But it's just a thing of like, that's me personally, and I understand that that's an idea and a mentality that is in the minority by a fairly significant margin.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I was actually more talking about like the PlayStation Store, the Wii Shop. Like I was talking more about like digital download titles than MMOs when I was asking.
95% off, and then the developers can do whatever the fuck we want with the code, to where, like if you want to buy it, it's like 30 cents to buy what used to be a $40 game, and the developer then has the right to distribute it however they so choose. They can make it free to play and free downloadable for all they care while the servers are still active on the PlayStation Store shop. That's how I do it, but again, minority, not probably going to happen.
One thing that I would say that I know I'm in the minority from, but as soon as I found out how it worked, and there's a couple people in the gaming industry interested in this, but one of the big companies has to get behind it for it to work, is using blockchain technology to allow us to truly own digital products. Because with blockchain, you can link a single copy of any digital thing to a specific person, and that is yours, and you can sell it, you can do whatever you want as it. You can own it like you would do a physical copy of something. And that, in the PC market, would be the answer to a lot of things. Where it's yours and you can back it up legally and you can do whatever you need to because you legally own it.
That would be a very, very interesting method.
Mm-hmm.
It surprises me how much pushback we get from developers, from publishers, big companies in the industry, that the pushback on preservation, because I have always felt that if you are going to take down a server or some sort of distribution network like an online storefront, like, if you have already made the decision to stop letting people play, if you've already planned on not getting another cent more, why the big reluctance and the angry pushback when somebody, a fan, tries to keep that game alive?
That is a very good question, Brian. And you want to know what? I think we will answer that on the next half of downloadable content.
Ooh, cliffhanger!
So, I'd like to thank everybody out there. Go get a drink, go pee, do whatever you need to do, and we will be back shortly. And welcome back to Downloadable Content. Before we left, I cut Brian off where he was trying to make a very salient point. Brian, what were you saying?
Words. I said words.
Words? I don't even know what those are.
No, the English major doesn't know what words are. Very nice. Well...
Writer, not English major. Get it right.
Close enough at this point, really. But anyway, yes. At the end of the first half, I asked, I posited the idea that there, despite the fact that when you have a situation where a game is going to be pulled from a server or an online storefront, it gets taken down.
You mean like PT?
Hey.
Like that salient point.
It's when you have a situation where the developer has made the decision to pull the game, they are no longer going to make any money off of it. They have come to that decision. Why do they get so hot and bothered when somebody, like a fan, or within a fan base, they want to keep the game going, so they themselves set up a private server to continue enjoying the game? Why does that result in very angry and sometimes legal pushback? Because that was the question I posited, because I'm of the opinion that, okay, if a developer's not going to make money off of it anymore, why hoard?
I suppose...
Because intellectual property, greedy assholes, and they want their own slice of the pie, even though the slice of the pie is now more so a crumb.
But before you go, Ronnie, but what slice of the pie? They've already made the decision they're not making money on this anymore.
Well, I suppose I would think there's two big things. One is, it doesn't matter if they're not making money off this. They don't want you playing the old game. They want you to buy their new game. If you're playing their old game, you're not playing their new game. It's literally trying to stop them from competing against their own games. And the other half of it is theft. They go, we own this, and we're telling you you can't use it. In their mind, it would be like you going, well, that car has been sitting in your driveway for years and you don't use it. They've just been sitting there. I don't even think you have a license plate on it, so I'm going to take it and refurbish it and use it myself.
Because intrinsic value of the object, even though the object may not be in use.
Yep. Because they may want to do a port of it someday. And if everybody can already play it... Yeah, or sequel. And if anybody can already play it anytime they want, then why would they pick up the new one? Because they need to make the new one better would be the reasonable assumption, but they don't care about that.
I mean, we take a look at a couple of examples because Nintendo really likes doing this. We saw the examples, I think, last year or a couple of years ago where there was a couple of fan creations. We got Pokemon Uranium.
Yep.
And we got a fan-created Metroid 2.
Yep, AM2R.
AM2R, yes. And
48 hours for AM2R. 48
Yep.
hours.
Now, these were fan creations that were made for free because the fans have, a deep love for these franchises. They were not planning on making any money off of these. This was done for love of the game and for the series because, especially in the case of Metroid, Nintendo hadn't done anything with Metroid forever.
Well, at least Nintendo knew that they were already doing their own Metroid 2 remake.
Yes.
I'm not sure about that. Let's be honest here. Since the Other M the time gap between Other M and Metroid 2 Samus Returns remake, that was 7 years, 8 years?
But the time period between AM2R being pulled down and them announcing Samus Returns was 2 months. So Samus Returns was already being worked on when that game came out.
Well, it got announced, and then it came out when? When did it, from announcement to release? When did that happen?
Hold on.
I don't know, but when they did the announcement, we saw some screenshots, so they had to have already had it in the works.
I could those screenshots were shown.
So wait,
I could have rendered it fucking Photoshop in 5 hours.
You think they pulled AM2R down and then were like, "Hey, that's a good idea. We should work on that."
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I think they did that.
I'm not laughing at you. It's fine if you believe that. I'm guess I'm not that bitter with them yet.
Hey, listen,
there's a reason I call Ron the Cranky Kong, the Cranky Kong co-host over here.
I'm a big fan of Metroid. They did a pretty piss poor job of Other M because they did it how they wanted.
Other M was other than atrocious.
Like, the gameplay was fine. The story in it was fucking terrible.
I play games for the story mostly, so to me it was atrocious.
Okay, so here's some information for you. The last 2D Metroid game prior to this was Zero Mission, 2004.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 13 years. Okay. Other Samus Returns, the remake, came out September 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So
and then Other M, AM2R was.
Hold on, let's get Other M up here. Hold on.
I want to say 2010 for Other M.
Metroid Other M. Come on, Wiki. I know you can do it. 2010 on the nose, correct. And then AM2R. It was released August 2016.
So August 2016 to September 2017.
So
13 months for a port of a game with a very simplistic 2D, 2.5D because it's 3D.
Okay, wait, it's a remake, not a port. There's not a piece of the original in that.
Fair enough. 13 months. They were probably in early development of it. They were probably in the nailing down the initial engine and probably the beginnings of the alpha build when AM2R came out.
I can't help but think AM2R came down faster than anything that has ever been put on the internet for Nintendo. I can't help but feel like that was because they went, holy fuck, we're already working on this. God damn it, this needs to go away right now.
I think that, okay, with that timeline, my cynicism goes down a decent amount. Not all the way, but I was at like a 90, I'm at like a 60 now.
All right, okay. So according to Wikipedia, it went up for free. It came out August 6, 2016, coinciding with Metroid's 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
When they announced Samus Returns was the 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
So the announcement basically came at almost the same time.
So August 6th, it went up. Nintendo sent a DMCA notice to websites that were hosting that. The download links came down on August 7th. The developer for AM2R said that he still planned to improve on the game privately, and he was encouraging AM2R players to buy the official Metroid 2 version on the eShop. September 2nd, so almost a full month later, that's when he got the cease and desist from Nintendo.
Yep.
So then the developer for AM2R, he took the game down. Other people further tweaked the game still, the fan community.
Yeah.
And then the developer was hired by Moon Studios. He's working on Ori 2.
Sweet.
So
Guy knows what he's doing.
Moon Studios saw AM2R and went, let's get him.
Yeah, keep in mind too that he also he invested money into it to pay people to redo the music.
Yes, he did.
That's the thing. Like, and I've heard people say it before. Like, okay, your Pokemon Uranium was amazing. Why doesn't Pokemon Company hire him? Why doesn't Nintendo get like when a fan does something this amazing and obviously have the skills, why not put them to work on the thing that they're working on passionately for free?
Right?
I would want somebody that excited about my franchise working with me. What about you guys?
It's...
I would think so too. I would think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So
yes.
It's just like I see stuff like this going on, and it's just like it just irks me because it's like, you know, if you're not doing anything with the franchise, let the fans go to work. Clearly there's a demand for it. Take the stick out of your ass.
I wish there was more fan rights for fair use. Because if you're not making money off of the product that they're doing, and you're doing it out of love for the franchise, I don't understand why we... Like, look at fanfiction.net and look at all of the different TV shows and cartoons that are dealt with there. That entire thing could be pulled down at any point if any of those rights owners got to stick up their ass. But they don't.
And there were several authors that
yes.
Several authors put up a big stink about the fan fiction going up on the old FFnet.
Yes, but that's rare. For TV shows and stuff, that's not really an issue.
Right.
And like that's a choice. And the video game industry has chosen to be zero tolerance because they need to make a living. I respect that. I'm not saying anything bad about that. And right or wrong, they see every single thing that's released as competition, including their old products, which is why at least the companies, maybe not the developers themselves, but the companies would rather scrub their old product off the face of the planet and make it so it never existed than allow people to play it in any form.
It makes no sense, though. I mean, I get what you're saying. I totally understand what you're saying.
That would be like me saying, I'm writing a book, but I've said it, so after you read it once, it will set itself on fire. So you can't read that again. You need to come read my new book because that one's no longer for sale.
I didn't realize we had Mission Impossible for books.
Yes. I was going to say, the matchbook pages. It's going to be a thing.
And
every page you turn is a potential spark of ignition.
Yes.
Which is funny because Pokemon Uranium, same thing. It was released August 2016, and after it had been downloaded by like 1.5 million people, they got a cease and desist from Nintendo. They shut down the website. However, the seed was already planted because it has been taken up by the community. They're still creating patches.
Yeah, AM2. I was say MT. You can still get AM2R.
Yeah,
no matter how much. Yeah, no matter how much Nintendo goes, once it's out there, it ain't going back.
And I would think that Nintendo took such a heavy-handed approach. I think that sort of does like the reverse psychology thing.
People want to just to spite them.
Yeah.
I mean, people want some of these things. And here's the thing, like, I mentioned it earlier, but, like, we're talking about games that they pull down that don't exist anymore. The two examples I'll give are PT and Flappy Bird. And the reason I'll use them is because people are still, to this day, selling PS4s with PT on them, or cell phones with Flappy Bird on eBay.
So what's PT? Am I blinking on what this is short for?
Yep. PT is what it was. That's literally the title for it, but it was short as you find it at the end for playable trailer. It was the playable trailer for Silent Hills.
Oh, this was the okay.
Yep. It was called PT. That was the name of it because you weren't supposed to know it was Silent Hill until you beat it.
Right, and then Kojima
was fired.
Kojima was fired, and Konami did the
Salt the earth.
Yeah, let's
salt the earth.
Yeah, destroy Kojima and every single trace.
They pulled it off of the store, and they asked Sony if there was any way to physically pull it off of PS4s that had it installed.
And the answer to that is a no.
Yep, the answer to that was a no.
Okay, the answer should have been a no, and it was. The actual answer is theoretically yes, we could. But it's illegal. So
no. The answer was we can strip their accounts of the rights to PT, but we cannot delete it off of their physical PS4s. They'll have it until it's deleted.
All right.
How fucked is that? On a scale of 1 to 10, how fucked is that?
So I just want to make a point here. Did I'm kind of noticing just now. Why is it that the Japanese companies are doing this bullshit? Nintendo, Konami, Capcom's done it before.
It's not that American companies don't at all, but you're entirely correct, and I believe it is a cultural thing between the culture of the Western video game industry and the Japanese video game industry. I mean, if you ask anybody who's been in both of them, especially some of the developers that have left the Japanese companies, they will tell you that they are far more set in their ways and far more it's their way or the highway, and they really don't care what their consumers think.
Yeah, because I know, I understand and I get that. It's just it's a combination of both a culture thing and mistreatment of your consumer base.
Yeah, and here's the thing,
which for us is like tantamount to suicide.
Yeah,
but
it's
for them,
it's hard. Yeah, it's hard for me to believe that the individual developers, the people making the game, wouldn't want the years of their life they spent on this game, that they wouldn't want that game preserved in some way. That's really hard for me to believe that at least some of them wouldn't want this. I have to think that most of this is coming from the higher ups.
This has got to be CEO and shareholder. If not like an individual, a small percentage of them dictating this policy, because they're oldie curmudgeon people who have gotten to the video game industry at its inception in like the 70s and the 80s and are sitting on literal boatloads of money and are like 80 years old and they have no idea what they're going to do with it. So they're being spiteful old bastards because they're old.
Yes. I'm gonna if you or Brian have any other just general things you'd like to say about this, I'm gonna leave that to you guys, and then I think we'll move into the wrap up where we'll talk about anything we can think of that we can do to make this practice, things that could fix this practice, or things that could make this better for the consumer.
Well, it's just interesting because, for the longest time, and I still am, I like to have a physical copy of a game whenever possible, because...
By the way, look into limited run games. We talked about them last podcast.
Shameless plug there.
This podcast is not sponsored by limited run games, but it could be. Call me.
Yeah, just call Ronnie. Just waiting for the royalty checks to come in. But what the hell was I saying? before you cut in with that fake plug. I forgot it now. Hold on a sec. Oh, okay, yes. You know, physical. I prefer to have a physical copy of a game over a digital copy only, because we are old people in our 30s who grew up with nothing but physical copies. So the idea of digital distribution as like a way that some games only release is like, we have no backup.
It's funny to me, the mindset, because for me, I want a physical copy for my consoles, but I'm perfectly fine with Steam on my computer.
Same.
And I'm not quite sure why I have that mentality. Because what's the difference?
There's the sense and an illusion of an account, which is not necessarily the most secure thing, but it's an account that you have tied into it.
And there's the concept that, like, right now there are ways to play DOS games on Windows 10.
Yep.
So there's at least the thought process of, okay, there's no reason Steam should ever have to go away unless Valve goes out of business.
And at this rate, that's probably true.
Yeah,
so that Steam account could last forever. Not really forever, but
it should probably last our lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds. Like, if we get a nuclear war and everything could go away, but in a reasonable sense, Steam is pretty secure as we can get, without literally owning the games without DRM.
Right, but something I notice now, even with, and this is true of console games as well, you know, physical copies of console games, like, if you get a physical copy of a game, you need to, you know, this only works when you activate it online. Instead of just popping the game in and just starting to play. Like, I just pulled this up as an example because, again, it's on my brain. Ori and the Blind Forest. You can buy a physical copy of the game for PC.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to play it, you need to activate it on Steam.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then what's the purpose of buying a physical copy of this game if you need to have a Steam account to activate it anyway?
There is none to have the shelf candy.
Here's another. This was mentioned too. Like, the activation servers for all these games. Like, that's going to be a thing that's going to go away eventually. That's you can't tell me eventually there's going to be some relatively popular game that's going to get canceled and the servers are going to be taken down for it, and then people aren't going to be able to play it, not because they can't re-download, but because they can't get the quote-unquote authorization to activate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, like, you already have stuff. I mean, I'm far less concerned with Steam, but, like, what about, like, how about each of the individual companies who have their own services like Steam?
Like
Origin.
like Origin, yeah.
Origin Engine, Epic Games, Bethesda.
Those aren't lasting forever. Those are going away eventually. Maybe not Blizzard. Blizzard's like Nintendo. Blizzard's stubborn.
I don't know about that. Blizzard's. I really have no idea what the hell Blizzard's doing with their intellectual properties.
They're
I'm
making
still
billions of dollars with them. That's what they're doing with them.
I'm still confused with how they're making money off of Overwatch, but they are.
Loot boxes.
I guess?
That's literal. No, that's how they make their money. And they're making more money. I believe they were making more money with Overwatch, they announced, than they were with World of Warcraft.
Alright. Alright, fine. Whatever. I have issues with Overwatch as a game.
Mm-hmm.
But that's neither here nor there.
Mm-hmm. As I make random baseless speculation, I'm pretty sure I remember reading that. I know they're making a very good chunk of money with Overwatch. I believe they announced that they made more money in 1 month with Overwatch than World of Warcraft. I have no idea if that's still true or which is on top now, but they're making a chunk of change with Overwatch. They're making money hand over fist.
Well, be that as it may, but yeah, it's just like even now, even when, when we thought that having a physical copy of a game was the safe bet. Now it's like, okay, you got the physical copy, you still can't play it unless you activate it online.
Even the Switch. I have games where I put them in and it tells me you need to download a software update for this.
Yep.
Those software updates are going to be gone someday.
Nintendo... As an example, I had the same thing for my 3DS. When I picked up Samus Returns on the 3DS a few months back, and I hadn't used my 3DS in 6-7 months. I had to download a software update before I even got it quote-unquote authorized to play the game.
Yeah. And, like, Nintendo's better about this, where they generally don't release horribly broken games. But what about a game like Skyrim, where when it came out, it was broken as fuck. And it took patches to make it the playable game that everyone loves. Guess what? Those patches aren't going to be there in 20 years. Skyrim may be a bad example because they've re-released it on every goddamn system ever. It'll probably never be out of print, and the new versions of it have the patches, but I bet everybody here can name at least one game that was buggy as hell that didn't get re-released that just you can't touch now.
I'm waiting for Bethesda to put Skyrim out on ENIAC.
When you have Alexa and Samsung refrigerators and Etch-a-Sketch, I think
I want Skyrim to be playable on that computer in Willy Wonka that tries to tell you where the 5 golden tickets are.
I'd like to play it on a TI-88.
Ooh, that's an untapped market. Skyrim on a TI-88 graphing calc. That would be that would be interesting. Fusro calculus. Fusro Pythagoras.
So, anything else? Do you think we're ready to start winding down a little bit?
I think we can mosey on. We can frolic into your.
Oh, actually, I will bring one last thing off before we do that.
Okay.
I meant to mention this when we brought up Tabula Rasa. Here's a funny little story.
Ooh, story time.
When I was working at Walmart, we had a copy of Tabula Rasa in our back room a year after it shut down. They kept trying to mark it down and put it out, and I kept telling them, no, you can't sell this game. It will not play. And I had to keep explaining to our store manager there are no servers for this game anymore. We cannot sell this to our customers. It sat in our back room for years. It ended up having to come to our to talking to our market manager to convince them that we need to just mark this down and throw it out, because we'd missed the recall on it when it went out of business, and after that you're stuck with it and you're supposed to sell it.
Even though it's entirely obsolete.
Even though it is a literal drink coaster now. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Corporate America, ladies and gentlemen. Corporate America, right there.
Yep.
Absolutely. So, we talked about a lot of... By the way, I think this podcast is going to be having an explicit rating, Brian, because I'm pretty sure I've sworn a lot in this podcast.
They all have it.
Please, they all have.
They all. It's we do not. I don't edit for language. You know that.
I know. So we've talked about a load of fuckery in this podcast.
Oh yes, tons of fuckery.
So how could we unfuck the fuckery? What could we do, or what could the industry do to improve these many times predatory business practices.
I don't think this is something that the industry will embrace because of currently how illegal it is. But I mentioned toward the beginning of this emulation.
Well, part of that might be making it less illegal. Like, they can, the Library of Congress can make exemptions, and that's part of how the NES and SNES, the backing up of cartridge-based systems and CD systems exist.
Right.
But there's no exemption for server-operated games.
Right.
So, to me, the simplest answer would be declaring that any video game made is art.
Mm-hmm.
Because once it gets classified as a significant cultural thing that to become classified as art, it gets brought into a new sect of laws, which basically just means a lot more exemptions given. Yeah, a lot more protections given to both the person who owns the thing as well as preserving it for future generations.
You mean sort of like what the National Film Registry does?
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, another thing along that lines, they could literally make a law that says if you shut down a server-operated video game, you must release the server code to the public. That is something they could do. That would take a lot of pushing to get that passed, and there would be a lot of kickback from the video game industry as a whole, but, like, that is literally something that is possible. Like, our legal system would allow for that.
Yes. You want to try getting it? I mean, obviously, not in the current political climate, but yes, that is certainly something that can be a thought. You know, passing legislation to preserve, such a thing. Interestingly enough, though, I would think that something like that would first need to require a massive paradigm shift as to how we collectively view video games in this country, because in this country, video games are not seen as a serious form of culture or art or entertainment.
Well, here's the thing. Even if we see them as older now, Brian, I think this whole concept of obsolescence comes down to we see video games as disposable.
That's where I was going.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I will see myself out, good sir.
That's where I was going.
I just saying blocked you. I'm sorry. Chelsea blocked you.
So, where I was going was, in a few more leaps, we see video games collectively in this country as a child's plaything, as a toy.
They're pulp novels.
We do not see video games as the important facet of our culture that they deserve to be, which is something that Japan does. I mean, video games are an important part of the Japanese culture. Yeah. That sort of mindset has not carried over into this country. We still see video games as toys. I compared Mona Lisa to early video games in the art students can look at Mona Lisa, but later generations of game designers aren't going to be able to look back on our games. So, and I think people in America would be furious I made that comparison.
So the comparison would be, you can go and see the Mona Lisa, but you can't go see, the Silver Knights, the night painting with the Van Gogh.
Mm-hmm.
Starry
because
Night?
That's Starry Night, maybe.
Starry Night.
Yeah.
No, but there are copies of it everywhere.
Yeah, but my point is would be like, if the NES and SNES had the emulators for backing them up, like that would be like the Mona Lisa.
Yep.
But Starry Night would be the like PS1 through PS3, PS4 era comparison. We'd be like, imagine someone can't see the Starry Night because the original was lost to time for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is a work of art that people have studied and talked about and written papers on for literally hundreds of years that can't that if we apply the archaic, barbaric, current system of video gaming to that, like, that might not exist.
The current copyright legislation favors the creators of content too much and the users of content not enough, especially when you're dealing with software.
And it ties back into intellectual property law, which is a whole slew of shit. And it basically boils down to, we recognize that someone made a thing, and they should be able to charge however they wish to charge for it, but they don't go into the length thereafter of, well, how do we preserve this thing? And there's no thought applied to that next step of how do we preserve it? How do we let this thing continue to exist? And that's what we are trying to talk about and discuss, or try talking about and discussing. But they're still focused on step one. They're not looking forward to step two.
Another thing that I think would be big, like, okay, so some of the things we're talking about were bigger ways of fixing this. Something small that would help for first-person shooters or any other online multiplayer game like that. Just give a local or LAN multiplayer option. Just put it there. Then, even if the game ends and the servers go down, if you have people that you know that want to play the game, you can still play it.
That would still require multiple systems networked together to function as a network or as a server for those games, because there's no multiplayer split screening in modern day first-person shooters. You need to have them networked together into a server to do that.
Well, when I said LAN, I meant more for PCs.
Yeah, but even for PCs, you would still need to do a similar thing. And this ain't like in the early 2000s when you could just buy a network hub for Ethernet cords for like $30 and then slam like 5 or 6 monitors onto a rickety old $10 poker table. And
dude, I did that. I did that a couple months ago.
I know. I'm just saying, not many people can do that nowadays with current technology.
Oh, LAN parties.
I'm pretty sure computers are just as mobile as they used to be. I do understand where you're coming from. I'm just saying that would at least be a bone thrown to allowing multiplayer to continue when the servers go down.
Speaking of PC, and this is just a random tangent because of our discussion about E3 earlier. Do you remember hearing about the Halo, hack, Halo 3 hack that was coming out?
No, I did not.
So, double check. I could be getting my information wrong here, but there was a Halo 3 hack that was going to get released by a bunch of fans of Halo 3. That was basically going to make it a open world, or at least a log into a server and play on a map and play against people all across the world. Basically, kind of do a quarter. Like they weren't changing the game too much. They were just basically just making it so that you could play Halo 3 worldwide compared to server-based Halo 3 when that came out. And Microsoft DMCA'd them within like 36 hours. I can't remember the name of this project, but I remember people were playing it and streaming it even, and then they got DMCA'd, and the people streaming it had to almost immediately stop doing that and switch to something else. And I'm not talking about like small people that are doing this. I'm talking like really big, important fans and players in the Halo community that were trying this out and were like actively enjoying the thing that they were playing more than current Halo.
That's funny right there.
And this was before E3. This is so like we didn't know Halo Infinite was coming out, which is basically what these people were doing, or basically what these people had made. out of the Halo 3 engine, but it's still funny that this was a thing that the fans had done and made that was kind of really similar to what Microsoft was going to do and show, but the fans did it first because they're that passionate for it. I forget the exact name of what the project was called. I remember it was a Halo 3 hack for PCs. And I just can't remember the specifics, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was a similar thing with where there were two very large Chrono Trigger hacks that were going on that Square Enix took offense to existing, even though they're not doing a damn thing with Chrono Trigger at all.
Yep.
So I actually had one thing I wanted to bring up. I think we're pretty much done, right, guys?
I think we're getting there.
Okay, I got one last note that I forgot to bring up earlier, and that is I'd like your guys' opinion on the games as service model, because that is forced obsolescence in its baseline. The best example is literally what just got announced for the Switch in Japan, which is the Resident Evil 7 on the Switch, where it is literally streaming information from other servers, and you rent a certain number of months that you have the game. Have you even heard of that yet?
Yes, I did,
Okay.
and I tried very hard to put it out of my brain, but you just brought it back, so damn you, Servo. Alright, let's see, where do I begin with this? I suppose, depending on the cost of this service, I suppose that if you weren't willing to spend the $60 to have this game, just own the game, I guess it might be cost effective, I suppose, if you're gonna rent the game for a few months. I mean, I could see where it could potentially be good, but at the same time, you're live streaming a game that requires some setup.
Also, this is also a thing that got mentioned during and brought up and talked about during the Microsoft's E3 press conference. Microsoft is doing a similar thing where they're doing a game as streaming service thing, where you sign up for their service, which is $10 a month, I think, $10.99, something like that, and you can live stream a game from all like the Xbox and Xbox 360 library to your console to play it on your console. And it's just like, okay, in theory, sounds good. That's a lot of fucking games and a lot of emulation you need to do, and I don't know if you're gonna make your money back with all that server setup to keep running that server. Not to mention the internet service the ISPs in America vary from tolerable to fucking garbage.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big one. I'm not as much concerned with them making their money back, in that this just won't be viable if they don't, and then it'll go away. My concern is, so right now it's literally, this is like renting a video game. I'm okay with that. Like, we all rented stuff from Blockbuster. As long as they don't charge too much for it, I'm okay with that. What bothers me is the concept that we could go down where we could have games that are exclusively rented only, and that is the pinnacle of forced obsolescence, where you are literally going, okay, you can't have this game more than this number of months, and then it's gone forever.
That's not even forced obsolescence. That's literally putting a timer on the game of like, this game will last X amount of months, As soon as that timer hits 0, that game is gone. That is a terrible way to run a game or a business or release a game that no one should encourage. I don't care how good the game is. If your game is only available for playing 3 months and then it's going to be gone forever, fuck you, you're an idiot.
Here's the problem. The games as a service, developers are finding that it's making them a fuck ton of money.
Yep.
Because the games they're making are not to the dedicated gaming audience. They're doing it to the plebs that play Candy Saga on their phones.
Here's the thing.
Well, gaming as service, like MMO, every MMO is games as service. And go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Like, for example, I'm pulling this article up from Kotaku, which was put out in February of this year. Ubisoft put out as part of a quarterly earnings report that they found that like a traditional regularly released game, so Ubisoft was saying that a standard game, they make 100% of their money back, for example. Then in its second year since release, it brings in 13% of its original revenue. Whereas a game as service, year 1 they make 100%, and in year 2 they make 52%.
I'm feeling slimy just thinking about this.
Yeah, I'm just like, please don't go this way. Please don't go this route.
The game industry has to make their money, and the farther we go that it stays at $60 as the maximum price for a game, the more they're going to, like, if anything, like, I'm not being negative here when I go, if anything, we as a public have to take a little bit of the blame for this, because we refuse to let the prices go to where they need to go. So they're going to find a way to make their money anywhere, and once they realize they can make the money at that point, they're not going to stop at how much they need. They're going to bleed every penny they can.
Right, and they further bring home the point that video game developers are also really, really a big fan of digital distribution.
Mm-hmm. Because there's no trade-ins.
Not only that. Let me finish. Then you can shock and outrage. For example, and again, same article. When you buy a $60 Ubisoft game at GameStop, Ubisoft has to give 25% of that $60 to GameStop, 20% of what's left to the hardware manufacturer, and then Ubisoft keeps the rest. Whereas with a digital game, all Ubisoft has to do is just give 30% of that $60 to the distributor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what Ubisoft is saying is that their ideal customer is the person who buys service games digitally and then just keeps playing them.
And if they can sell it on their website, they get to keep 100% of it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yes, we are definitely partially to blame for that, Ronnie, because yeah, video games have held forever between $50 and $60. For some reason, well, no, it's not for some reason, we know the reasons. NES cartridges were selling at $50.
Yep. Yeah, there were Super Nintendo cartridges that sold at $80. The ones with the special chips. Yes,
and to this day, you will not see a AAA title for more than $60. At least the standard edition. I'm not talking about collector's editions and things like that. Standard edition, when really they should be much higher.
In our lifetime, prices should have gone up by a order of magnitude more than they have, and they haven't, but the cost of video games has risen exponentially since the 80s. So
let's again. This is a topic we've mentioned multiple times on DLC. We've probably done episodes on in the past too. These are problems that are prevalent not only in the video game industry but in basically all walks of life right now.
I think the reason it keeps coming up though is that almost every problem in the video game industry links back to this in some way. Like it is the original sin of video games. All of the issues are them. Most of the issues we have in video games are different ways that there are patchwork ways that they're trying to fix this one issue.
I'm waiting for the eventual push of who's going to go above 60. Which AAA game is going to come out that's going to be $70?
They tried. In Canada, they raised the price to $70, and the kickback was so immediate and so hard that the companies are terrified of trying again. Because that was a soft run that if it went well, they were gonna do it here, and it went so poorly that they're terrified of it.
To me, I think this is a problem that's only going to grow worse if the current climate of consumerism and corporate cronyism increases. And
it certainly doesn't seem to be decreasing.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. Is if I have opinions that are not video game related, so therefore I will not talk about them. But things are not.
If we started talking about real politics here, we'd be here until midnight.
Fucking no shit, Jesus Christ! We talk enough as it is.
Yeah, so that's.
I think we're done for the night. How about you guys?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Ron's like, I'm good. Otherwise, I'm going to start ranting.
Okay. As we wind this episode down, I'd like to remind everyone that if any of you out there in this wide world of the internet have anything you'd like to tell us about this or any other episode of Downloadable Content, you can contact us on Twitter or Facebook. I'd also like to remind everyone that every single episode of Downloadable Content can be found on the website dlcpodcast.com. Episodes can be found on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and Google Play Music. All that remains is to thank my guests, Brian and Ron, for joining me on the first episode that I've ever run of this. Thank you for listening, and have a good day, everyone.